Hi, I'm Karina Longworth, and I'm here at Studio SX at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas, with Scott Kirsner. Scott, what are you doing today at South by Southwest?
As usual, trying to cram in as much as possible. But I was just moderating a panel this morning on visual effects and computer animation, kind of looking at how technologies and new software are making that more accessible to indie filmmakers. And was doing a panel yesterday about digital cinema, and also starting to plug my forthcoming book, Inventing the Movies, which is not quite out, but I've been sort of giving out some galley copies to people that are here at South by and are also in the book.
When will it be out?
Looking for, that's a very nice plug there. Later this spring, so around May.
Cool.
And how about you? You haven't started panelizing yet at South by, but you've just been seeing a lot of movies?
Yeah, I'm going to be on a film blog panel later today, and then I'm moderating a self-distribution panel tomorrow. But so far, I've been just going from movie to movie to movie.
And what have you been noticing? Like, is there an Uber trend this year in terms of what you've been seeing, or?
Well, I think that South by Southwest has this reputation as being the home of mumblecore, and a lot of people don't really like that word, but just this type of filmmaking that's very low budget, people working with available materials, non-actors. And I think that what we're starting to see is we're seeing movies being made at that same budgetary level with some of the same tools as far as technology goes, but with a lot more visual polish and maybe a little bit more traditional narrative focus.
Oh, that's interesting. So better Mumblecore 2.0, better Mumblecore.
I mean, I think a really good example of something like that is this movie called Medicine for Melancholy, which is my favorite of the features I've seen that are here. And it's directed by this guy, Barry Jenkins. It's set in San Francisco, and I think it's really exciting.
It's interesting that the the Mumblecore thing is now so connected to South by, and I guess it plugs into something that I've been hearing a lot about and talking a lot about at the festival this year, which is filmmakers kind of experimenting with new artistic forms. And I think Joe Swanberg, with some of what he's done with his serialized episodic things for the web, like I'm trying to remember the name of the one, Young American Bodies, that he did for Nerve, and I think there have been a few other series. I'm sort of expecting more and sort of hearing more filmmakers interested in experimenting with, not making the 90-minute feature every year, every 2 years, but kind of doing shorter stuff for the web and experimenting both with, what can you do that's really cool and that connects with audiences, and then what can you do that also makes some money as a filmmaker?
Well, I think that, Joe is a great example. Like, we at Spout.com, we've sponsored his latest web series, which is called Better Knife, and it's both a work of art, like a narrative story, but at the same time, in every episode, there's a different independent filmmaker who stars in it. So it kind of functions both like as a work of drama, a work of filmmaking, but also as a promotional tool for all these people.
Yeah.
So, they like it's really interesting because I think that a lot of people think a lot of people get stuck trying to figure out how do you use something like YouTube to distribute your work, but you can also be making work that's like maybe somewhere in between, just blatant promotion and actually a full feature.
Yeah, I do feel like we're at kind of a turning point in 2008 where people have been looking for the last couple years at internet video and saying, it's not, it's sort of oriented to like jokes and dogs on skateboards and, sort of stupid human tricks. And that it didn't really feel like art, or it didn't feel like there was a lot of creative juice to it. And I feel like people are now starting to look at internet video as like, yeah, you could use that as an expressive medium. You could use that as a medium for storytelling, that it's not kind of a novelty anymore. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing more stuff in that vein. And it was funny, in this panel this morning, Stu Maschwitz from The Orphanage, this big visual effects shop, was showing something that he made to he made basically an ad for Southwest Airlines to enter this contest, and it was just this really well-made sort of like high production value ad to enter some internet contest. And I don't know, to me that was sort of an indicator of like serious people starting to play around with, with the form of the 30-second or the minute-long internet clip.
Yeah, it would be really exciting if some Hollywood studio started like mandating, people, like famous Hollywood directors, to start making stuff for YouTube. But
yeah, unfortunately, I think since the death of the studio system, like they can't like issue memos and tell everyone to do it. But I feel like around the time of the Writers Guild strike this year, you were hearing a lot about you know, agents starting to work with talent and doing things like Funny or Die, which is like, I don't think Funny or Die is high art, but it's at least a good example of people who are already established as writers and actors in Hollywood saying, yeah, we're going to make stuff for this web audience. And I do think it's important to start to understand, you know, what works in that medium that wouldn't necessarily work on TV, wouldn't necessarily work in a movie theater, because it is going to be a new form.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine you talk about some of these things in your book.
Thank you for holding up the book again. The thing that's really interesting as a historical parallel, and I didn't think that I would talk about this, but you know, I was just reading this article that made me really upset in the Wall Street Journal, where he's talking about, Joe Morgenstern is talking about looking at movies on iPods and how you could never really, like David Lynch said some really negative things about watching movies on a small screen, and oh, it's not the kind of artistry that cinema is really about, and you lose all the detail, and you know, I almost imagined if Joe Morgenstern had been like a theater critic before the movies existed, you would really look at the early movies that Edison made, you know, they were like 2-minute shorts of like literally someone having a tooth pulled or getting a haircut or blacksmiths working. And if you were a theater critic in the 1890s, you would have looked at the early Edison movies and said, like, this is not art, this is total schlock. You know, it's in black and white, theater is in beautiful color.
And it's not drama.
It's not drama, there's no sound to it. And I feel like people kind of look at, you know, internet content or content for cell phones now and say, oh, that's not the same thing as cinema, and they really dismiss it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's worth mentioning that we don't really know what's going to happen. You know, I mean, this is an art form that could evolve in all kinds of ways. And
yeah, but do you think it could, when you say we don't know what's going to happen, I mean, do you think it could just be a complete dead end and that there's no art form here, that it's just kind of like a playground for like fraternity-oriented, you know, stunts?
I mean, in fact, like, I mean, one of the things that I try to do actually is like really seek out people who are using web formats in an interesting way. But I think that things are going to start looking less like traditional television shows and less like traditional short comedy films, and maybe move into some areas that are a little bit less directly cinematic in their references. Because I think that, I mean, there can be kind of a problem sometimes when a filmmaker tries to use things that would work on a big screen on a small screen. Yeah. And vice versa.
The one thing it occurs to me to ask you, because I've been noticing this trend since you have a very popular film blog, and I have sort of a very niche sort of film and technology blog. I've been noticing that I'm getting a lot more emails from filmmakers saying, please write about my film, and emails from PR people at studios saying, please write about some aspect of the film. And I guess I wonder, you know, if you think people are taking blogs more seriously as like, you are now the target of our PR campaign for, you know, for getting the word out about this movie, and gee, we hope you'll embed a clip of the movie. Do you feel like you're getting bombarded by stuff now? Well,
yeah, I mean, certainly there's, for certain kinds of films, I think that smart publicists have understood that their audience is not necessarily watching television as much as they're on the internet. They're not reading film reviews, but they are on YouTube and they're on blogs and they're looking for stuff that way. But I think that I get targeted a little bit more by independent filmmakers, people who don't have publicists, who, I mean, maybe it's because I have kind of a reputation for going to film festivals and writing about things that have, I guess, been undiscovered up till that point. But definitely I get a lot of direct emails from filmmakers.
Well, so there's a lot of stuff that falls in that category of being undiscovered, right? A lot of first-time filmmakers that like don't know how to get people interested in their movie.
It's not necessarily positive in connotation, but it's also not necessarily negative.
Well, but how does someone get written about? I mean, how I suspect there are a lot of people who want to know, like, how do I get coverage in your blog? How do you filter out, you know, what you're going to write about that's undiscovered versus what you're not going to write about and it's going to remain undiscovered forever?
I mean, it's really hard for me to say because I think a lot of it is instinctual, but also, I mean, just sending me an email that was obviously written to me and doesn't, you know, reek of form email, that helps a lot. Yeah. And being willing to do things like sending a screener or inviting me somewhere where the film is playing, you know, I mean, I'm more likely to be able to write about something that I can actually see than something that's sort of theoretical happening in the future.
Yeah, I think that you couldn't underscore that enough, you know, in every quarter of journalism, whether it's online or off, you get these emails and these packages that were clearly sent to a zillion people, and they don't really know what you write about, and it's not really targeted at you. And you kind of toss that stuff out versus it's so interesting when a filmmaker or an entrepreneur writes to you and says like, hey, I'm doing this new thing. let me tell you about it. I read your blog, and I kind of know that this fits into what you would cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you, Scott. It was good talking to you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.